Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first homeschool question and answer live broadcast. We're so happy you could join with us today, and we've gotten together a lot over the years as a group here in Texas and had some great homeschool gatherings, meetings, workshops, and we wanted to be able to include anybody who was able in on those. And we have some questions that have already come in. You're welcome to continue to text your questions into 254-230-0446 if you have any during the session. And we'll try to get to those as we are working through this session as we can, but there's a lot of questions. So if we don't get to them today, we'll do it on the next session. So do you want to begin?
Yes. So I've tried to compile several like questions together, so I'll go ahead and read some of those now.
Okay.
I thought we'd start by talking about writing workshops. That was one of the most common questions.
Okay.
So, can you explain what you mean by writing workshop? Can you describe what it should look like? Does everyone write their own writings, or do you write a group writing together on the board? Should I do separate workshops for different age levels?
Okay, so workshop is the question. I think we use that term a lot in homeschooling. We do a lot as a workshop with the family, and I think that one of the main goals of the workshop is to pull the family together. We feel like working in a family environment is more conducive to actually learning and to absorbing things and making it relational, and it's also inspirational for the younger kids, especially because they see what the older kids write, and that inspires them to improve their writing. They hear different angles, sometimes on the same topic, sometimes on different topics, and they hear their parents hopefully also writing. I always write with my kids. Shall I just maybe I'll just kind of explain what a workshop would look like in our family. And I will admit that in different seasons along our journey, they've maybe looked different. When all my kids were little, it looks different than when I have mostly teenagers. When we've got a baby in the room, it may still look different, but we'll try to tackle some of that. So a workshop for us would be coming together. I usually have a particular goal in mind. What am I going to teach today? What is the need, or what is the next writing level I want to see my kids be able to do? And so we'll all get together, and I will start by telling them what we're going to study today. Today we're going to do a compare and contrast writing, and we'll work on that, or we're going to do a picture writing, or we're going to write about smells, or we're going to write about the eclipse. It can be anything from a specific incident that's happened to a specific exercise in the book. And we'll talk about what we're going to do, and then I usually read several examples to the kids. And those may be examples that are actually in the book, in the Right Words book, or the Guidelines book, or if we're teaching out of Mastering Words, they may be something in there. But I also just read out of other books. I may find a great story in James Herriot or something like that that I feel like illustrates something I want to see my kids grow in. I want to see them be able to describe a character better. So I like it in this writing, and I'll read those out loud to get them inspired and to just put a standard out there that they can hope to attain to. And so we read that together, then we'll talk about how long we're going to write. We're going to write for 20 minutes, say. I don't usually give a whole lot more than 20 minutes in a workshop. And then everybody gets out their pens and paper, and we all write. I don't allow them to talk or to ask how to spell things or anything like that during the workshop. I think those things are a distraction from that creative flow. So they just will write as fast as they can. I tell them, do not worry about grammar, spelling, punctuation. That will be dealt with in another lesson. Right now, we just want to hear your voice, your experience, and we want it on the paper. And so we'll all write together. Usually you get to the end of the 15 minutes, the 20 minutes, and they're like, I need 5 more, I need 2 more, I have 2 more sentences. So sometimes I'll give a little bit more time. Sometimes I won't. I'll let them finish later because I don't want to keep everybody waiting. And then we all read together. So I usually start with the youngest. And then we work all the way through to the oldest, which is me. And we read together. And the beauty of the workshop is that it's not just developing their writing skills, it's developing relationship. It's developing an ability to be transparent with one another, to make discoveries about your family or your cousins, whoever's included in the workshop. Right now we have some of our cousins included in the workshop. We've done different things at different times. But I think having a few kids together so that they have some sort of gauge at which to see how they're doing. And oh, they really do better on this than me, and I can do better. That always helps. And we do them sometimes inside, but sometimes outside. And after we read, we will usually talk about what our favorite things are in everyone's writings. And a revision workshop would be where we would talk about things we think could be better in someone's writings. But in that first writing workshop where you just get the words down on paper, I don't usually deal with that. I just talk about what we like. Yeah. Okay, so that's, what does the workshop look like? What was some of the other questions in there?
So do you, I think you partially answered this already, but do you do a writing all together on the board, or does each person write their own workshop? I mean, their own writing.
Okay, that's a good question because both. Primarily, each person is going to write their own writing. But occasionally, I will do a writing on the board that we all contribute to. For instance, I love to do acrostic poems with my kids. If we've studied something in science and nature or even history, I might write a word on the board that we studied something about forests, Pacific Ocean. And we'll take turns coming up with a line and then try to rhyme the next line to the last one and make couplets, things like that. And we'll all do it together. I think that's very beneficial, a very beneficial exercise. The same with a lot of the poetry type of stuff I have originally taught them together on the board, but and the same with some expository types of writing. We will sometimes start a paragraph and come up with a thesis, and then I'll say, okay, who can come up with a good hook for this thesis, things like that, where we would work together just to learn how to do it, and then I'll usually have them duplicate it either in the same session or another one.
Okay. So this question is similar, but I'm going to go ahead and read it to you now. So, is it important that my child actually write in the workshop? Is there a difference between the child actually putting the pencil to the paper and writing, or is dictation to mom or speaking into the phone okay? At what age should I expect my child to write his own writings?
Okay. Well, yes, I think there is a difference. There's a difference between dictating and putting the pencil to the paper. It's another process to from being able to speak it to being able to write it. And I think both can be acceptable in different seasons, different situations, but we need to master both, and we need to be able to write down our thoughts. When you actually write it on the paper, something different happens, and even the way your brain is processing, the way you're absorbing the thoughts that are going through your head and putting them on the paper, the way you're going to remember it, and of course you're developing grammar, spelling, and punctuation skills. So I think both can be useful, but we do need to develop both skills. So in our family, a general goal for me has always been, let me have them writing their own writings in the workshop on the paper by 3rd grade. Before that, I want them to just be able to have those creative thoughts and to be able to articulate their experiences and their feelings. So I encourage them to dictate. And sometimes one of the things I'll do in terms of graduating them from just dictating their writing to me is to actually have them just write part of it. Okay, I want you to write your 2 favorite sentences that you have in your mind, and then you can dictate the rest to me. So we may build on that ability, but my goal has usually been the 3rd grade, that they could be completely independent in their ability to write everything that's coming into their heart and mind quickly down on the page in the workshop. Some have been later than that, and some have been earlier than that. It just depends on the kid. That's kind of the beauty of homeschooling, is that there is some give and some leeway in our children's when we expect them to get somewhere. We're going to recognize that some kids just learn their fine motor skills a little later. They develop them a little later than other kids. And so that's okay, as long as we actually have a goal that we are going to get that onto the paper and get them independent and where they're not fearful of writing things down. I think that some kids have a huge complex about writing it themselves because they're afraid of the spelling issues. And we need to tell them, it's okay if you are the only one able to read that. We'll teach you spelling in time, but we want you to be able to put the words on the paper, because it's a central thing for us to be able to articulate our experiences, our thoughts, our beliefs. And so we want them to feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah. So you don't advise that you work on spelling at all when it comes to creative writing workshops?
No.
Okay.
No. Do I use their writings to work on spelling? Yes.
Right.
Later, when we go back, we'll have a revision session, and I honestly usually do that with the individual kids. Not always. Sometimes it's appropriate to have several kids that are close to the same age or the same level to do it together, to work on certain revision techniques, or this one is struggling with this. But when they're all at different ages and levels, as they are in a family usually, it works better for me to work individually with them, and then they also don't get uptight about who's listening to how many misspelled words or whatever. And I'll work on the spelling, take the words out that were misspelled, and then we will begin to work on the whole process of spelling, which is another issue, another thing. But yeah.
So that brings us into the next group of questions, which is about revision. How do I help my child to revise his writings? What should I expect from my child at his level? How much revising should I do? And really, for a younger child, I would assume there's a lot less revising than for an older, but how much should how much should it be her words, and how much should it be the child's words?
Okay, yeah. So once again, I don't think we can have exactly a formula that says, okay, at this age you do this, and at that age you do that. It's not quite that cut and dried. These are kids with different capabilities and different, it takes different time for different children to mature and whatnot. But I would start with, when I'm revising them, giving them ideas. When they're very young, when they're first starting to write, giving them ideas. So in other words, if they say, today I walked to the river. I might say, okay, walked is a wonderful word, but is it the very best word? And then I might write on the board or on a piece of paper all the different words that also mean walked, and have them help participate in this. So what would be other words for walked or went? Say they said, I went to the river, and walked is even better than that. Say I went to the river. What would be all the different words for went? I strolled, I skipped, I dashed, I ran. They will together begin to think of all the different synonyms for went and introduce those concepts of like synonyms. And they can then pick one. And it may be one that I thought of, or it may be one that they thought of. They may have learned a few new words in the process, but we will work over it a sentence at a time, a small writing, like a paragraph, a sentence at a time, giving them new ideas of how we can structure these sentences. Or I might say, so this writing doesn't have any colors in it. It's pretty gray to me. Can you think of any colors that you saw on the way to the river? And they will come up with, oh, yes, the orchard trees were blossoming. There were pink flowers. Oh, that immediately shows me more about the walk to the river. So, okay, let's write that in. And I may have them write it, or I may let them dictate it if they're, say, in the 3rd grade. I find some of those writings before the 3rd grade are so adorable, I just leave them pretty much as is. But by the time they're in the 3rd grade, we're really looking at how can we improve this writing to make it better. And it's also just such a wonderful time to teach them other parts of speech, other grammar usages, and so introduce new concepts. So, for instance, I've noticed in this writing that every sentence here starts exactly the same way. By the 3rd grade, they're learning about the subject and the predicate in a sentence. Every sentence starts with a subject. It says I, every sentence. So let's just play with one of these sentences and figure out a new way to open the sentence. So I might put on, I went down the river road. And I'd say, okay, can we think of another way to start it without the subject? So you might say something like, on the river lane, I passed the orchard with pink flowers blooming. Okay, so now we started it with a preposition. And you will experiment in showing them different ways. Running down the river lane, I smelled the pink blossoms in the orchard. Okay, now we started with an ing verb. And quickly, I pulled on my boots and ran down the river lane. Okay, now we started it with an adverb. And so you can teach them all the different ways, and it becomes like a game.
Right.
It's really fun. I find that when I do that with my kids, and you don't even necessarily have to do every writing, you don't need to do every writing, the whole writing. You can take parts of a writing or your very favorite writing and just work over that one and make it a whole lesson in and of itself that says, I can do all kinds of wonderful things with these sentences. This is like an adventure. And if it feels like an adventure to you, it'll feel like an adventure to them. And so that would be where I would start in terms of revision. And I would say that may go on for a couple of years. Now, if they don't get it, I will often suggest to them, well, let's try to put it like this. Do you like that better? And I will make my own suggestions. If we're going to turn it into the fair, though, or something like that, and it's got a lot of my words, then I think it should say written by Nicholas with Mom, or something like that. Now, I'm not saying we can't tweak anything, but if you're putting whole thoughts into it, then it needs to acknowledge that it was written by Nicholas with Mom. By the time they get to the 6th or 7th grade, I will, if they don't come up with it on their own, so we'll have been through all this many times by then, and if they can't come up with the idea on their own or with some questions like, do you have any better sentence openers in the margin? I would put something like that. Do you have any better sentence openers? Check your grammar. Incomplete thoughts, not clear, and I'll put cues into a writing of a 6th, 7th grader and expect them to come up with it. And I might underline a sentence that I think needs some work, just to call their attention to it. But then if they don't do it, I'll go ahead and come up with one that I think's really good. Then they're going to really want it, and I won't let them have it because I came up with it. And that can always be disappointing, but also a good challenge for them in the next writing to come up with one. And sometimes if they see one that I came up with and I say, how about if we wrote it like this? They're like, oh, please let me keep it. No, that was my thought. Right. Then they might come up with one comparable on their own after that, because they just see the difference, the contrast between a well-written sentence and a poorly written sentence.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question?
Yes, that's very helpful.
Okay. More coming in as we go.
I don't have any coming in, so do you want to switch
gears?
Okay. Okay. So this is our next topic. So can you describe what your homeschool week looks like? What does each day of the school week look like? In other words, how do I get it all done?
Well, that's different in different seasons, once again.
Yes.
So if you've got all little kids, it's going to be different than if you have all teenagers or a mix. So we can talk about maybe we'll start with what I'm doing right now. Yeah. Does that sound good? And you can tell what you're doing too if you want. So we want to center our school around the Word. We're people of the Word. We feel like our ability to read comprehensively and write articulately and speak articulately is vital to who we are and to what we're trying to impart to our children. And if they can learn to do those things well, they're going to continue to learn for the rest of their lives. And so that's not all we're doing, of course. We have math and grammar and spelling and sciences and all of that. But all of that, in many ways, can feed into this idea of reading and writing. So the reading and writing take preeminence in our school day. And I think I said in one of our recent homeschool meetings, if I do nothing else in a day, we read together and we discuss it. Yeah. And if we write for 5 minutes, I consider that a very important and vital part of the school day. Better if we write more or longer, but if we can't get everything done, if we just put a prompt on the board and we write for 5 minutes to get that flow going again, to just make it a habit to write every day, every school day, and to read together and discuss every school day, it begins to change all the dynamics of the schooling. I find that taking that approach, you can really study anywhere and about anything. So if all else is failing and we're traveling or whatever, if we can still try to do that and really absorb what we're experiencing. We can see, we can hear, we can smell, and then we can put that into words. It's going to change everyone's going to be changed. Everyone's going to be matured. And so I've tried to make that the priority. So I'm just starting there. So our school day would start something like this. The kids get up, they have a certain set of chores and breakfast and all of those things that are expected to be done by a certain time every day. And then we will move into our family prayer time where we worship and we sing and pray and take prayer requests and discuss yesterday's service, whatever it may be, but have just a family time of just discussing things that have been going on. And then I usually move right into the reading. So we may be reading history, we may be reading science, we may be reading a historical story, whatever unit study we're in, and I know that's another topic, but whatever we're studying intensively right at the present, our reading will usually be related to that, as well as Bible reading, Bible character reading. So we will read together as a family, and I've always included my little kids, toddlers and whatnot, in on that too. It's a good opportunity for them to practice sitting still and listening. And then we will discuss it, and we will usually write something about it or have a formal workshop, one or the other. And then I give homework. And that's when the kids begin to work more on their own. So that will take up the time up until lunch. And when we break from the actual reading into the writing, I will usually move the toddler into another element. And he will play puzzles in the other room, or I'll have one of the siblings assigned. That's kind of part of their schooling, is to do preschool activities with them while I work with some of the other ones, things like that. And this kind of family interaction workshop reading time will usually take us up pretty close to lunch. Mm-hmm. And then after lunch, I have the children will work individually on their math, their spelling, whatever, and I will work with one of the children individually on, if it's a little kid, they'll have to work with me every day on their personal stuff. If it's an older kid, I will usually work once a week to go over all the writings and grading and just work through whatever they're working on, and we'll do that individually. Mm-hmm. So I'm almost always done with school by mid-afternoon. Mm-hmm. My kids, that's up to them whether they want to be done by then, or they could be, but mm-hmm. sometimes it will drag on a little later than that. But I guess sometimes the challenge that I have faced, and I think a lot of people face, is when there's a kind of this blend of a lot of little kids and some big kids. What do you do with the little ones? And that's where I think it's super important for them to listen in on the reading and to participate in the writing. Mm-hmm. But we do still have to, as long as they're still learning language arts, those first couple of grades, you still have to work with them every day individually on those things. Mm-hmm. Does that answer that question? I
think so. I think
read it again.
Okay. So how can you describe what your homeschool week looks like? What does each day of the week look like? In other words, how do I get it all done? And then maybe we can combine into this a question that just came in, and that is, how often do you have these writing workshops that we were talking about before? So maybe you could just kind of line out, what does your week look like?
Okay.
And then another question too that I think is important, and something that a lot of people wonder about, is how do I include my high schoolers in this? High schoolers do have a lot of other things going on also, and so do I expect them to join in with this family reading time?
Right.
So some of that might be helpful to talk about.
Okay. So no, I do not do a creative writing workshop every day. I do one once a week.
Okay.
That being said, I put a prompt on the board for just a little something. It may be 3 sentences, but a little something every day that they can write. But I do not do a full workshop every day. So we read every day. We have family time, prayer time, we read, and we discuss every day. We do usually write every day, but it's not a full workshop.
Okay.
So the creative writing workshop for us takes place on Friday. So then come back around the next week, we have Tuesday is usually the day that I introduce expository writing concepts. So our high schoolers are usually in their class on Monday, and so the next day I want to talk about how they're going to have a response paper to their class, or they're working on an essay or a summary or something like that. So that's a good day for me to introduce that. That would follow our family reading. We would then talk about the expository writing they're working on. And it isn't always in a full workshop form, but rather, in my case right now, I have 2 high schoolers. Last year I had 3. So the 3 of them would sit in, and I would send the younger children to do their penmanship, their math, or preschool activities with the baby or something like that. And I would work with them for probably half an hour on expository writing that they're dealing with right now. So has everybody thought about their thesis? Everybody give me a good thesis on what you talked about in class yesterday. Things like that. And we're kind of working our way through a lot of those more advanced mastering words concepts. But only as it really relates to what they're doing and they're studying, particularly in their literature class. So I usually do that on Tuesday. Then Wednesday and Thursday are just reading and discussion and the prompt. And they're continuing to work on whatever they're working on in their expository writings, in their revisions of their last creative writing. And then Friday, we usually do a shorter reading, and then, or if maybe not any reading from our unit study. So say right now we're doing a history unit study. I've been reading history on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, we may just read examples of great creative writing and do the creative writing workshop. So, does that seem to deal with it?
Yeah, I think for me, something you were just saying at the beginning, that seasons change. The kid makeup changes in our home. So for me right now, I have Mikey, who is in 6th grade, and then I have 2 high schoolers. So it's very different for me than when everybody was in elementary school or middle school.
Right.
So for me, on Tuesday, I do the same thing, but I will read the reader in the morning. I'll want the girls to listen in, even though they're not necessarily going to do a writing from it, but I just feel like it pulls the family together. The Lord speaks to us through the reader. So we'll do that, but then I'll get with the girls separately to work on their essay, to, plan their writing for the week. And then for Mikey, I'll have him write his writing off of the reader.
Yes.
So.
We actually do a bit of that too, because Nicholas is 11 and he's doing the reader. The other kids have done all the readers, and they're doing these other books that in their high school class. And so they're not doing that, and their expository writings aren't based on that. So Nicholas's is separate.
Right.
So he takes that time with me once a week to work on learning more of the expository skills and reading the reader, and he reads it out loud to me, and we work on his intonation and all that kind of stuff as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good time to bring in another topic. Does that seem like we've covered that? So, because I think it kind of comes together in this, and that is, how do you incorporate building Christian character into your school? How does that work together with the readers? How do you make a character notebook with the younger children? So.
Okay. Once again, different things in different seasons. So when they were all 5 and under,
Yes.
our character book looked a little different, and than it does now. I've done 2 different things, and you may have a third thing or a fourth. But one of the things I've done is make a whole family character notebook that where we all put everything into it, especially if we take a season all together to study a particular thing. But then I've also done individual character notebooks for each child. And I always do one when they turn 5. They're usually at the height of their ability to memorize massive amounts of scripture. And I don't think that a lot of those scriptures mean a whole lot to them at that stage. They're just, they're just learning to say them, and they take in very little of the meaning from, really 2 until 5. And at 5, it feels like they're starting to identify things in what they're memorizing. And so the first time I did it, was with my oldest Helen, and I didn't really know what to do. It was a very simple thing. All I did was I found we had these really cute coloring books that were, I think they were Mennonite coloring books, and they just had pictures of kids doing random things around a home or a farm. So it was anything from a little girl vacuuming the floor to feeding the chickens and milking a cow, just the normal everyday things. So I wanted her to remember the scriptures, so I would make a scripture card, and we made this notebook with a scripture card that said, do everything without complaining or arguing. And it had a picture of a little girl vacuuming the carpet with a big smile on her face. And so we kind of made up this story about how this girl was happy about doing it, even though vacuuming wasn't her favorite job, but she was helping, so she was happy. And so I just put one of these little 5x5 cards on one of the little rings in the notebook, and then I put the coloring pages, I photocopied them and we colored it together. I really worked on teaching her to color in the lines and color the same direction and all of that, and we put it in a sheet protector, put the card with it, and then she would just get to the point where she saw the picture and she'd say the scripture, because she so began to identify the scripture with the picture. Right. And the idea that I had was I wanted her to know what the scripture meant, and I felt like just the words didn't mean a whole lot, but if we kind of developed a story out of the picture, it would. So that's a long way of saying it can be very simple. Photocopy coloring pages and put a scripture with each one and kind of make a story about responsibility, about good stewardship, looking after your flocks, things like that.
So did you read the Building Christian Character to your 5-year-old?
No.
Okay.
I don't think that a 5-year-old's going to get much out of that. I mean, other than the scriptures.
Right.
So I would read the section and let it speak to me about both where my child is at and where I'm at and what my expectation is. And then I would just very simply talk to her about what it meant to be obedient. So is being obedient when mommy says, go make your bed, and you go and slowly drag your feet? No, that's not real obedience. Real obedience is when your heart is happy to obey and you do what mommy said. And I made it that simple. Right. And then your scripture, children, obey your parents in everything. So that was how much they participated in the book at 5. When I think it was the next year, but around 6, I think I would say, we did another one. So we did one every year for a while. And I didn't even put all of the traits, the character traits that are listed in there. There's 12. I would just put some of the main ones we were working on: obedience, responsibility, honesty, honor, good stewardship. I just whatever I was really working on with that child. I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to get through all 12 of them in 1 year with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. So the next year, I remember that we were a little more creative. We had I had her dictate to me what she felt like obedience was, and ways that she did it. Whenever I do this, I'm obeying. And then copy the scripture herself and things like that, or part of it, or the first letter, and just depending on where she was at. The book developed with the whole school year. So I've done all different kinds of books for my youngsters, but something akin to that, or one of the two of those, for all of them when they turn 5. Some of them it was, the big letter, and E is for evening and morning and at noon, I will pray and cry aloud, something like that. Some of them it was just like the letter. They were learning their letters with the scripture, and that's how we did it. Others, it was a coloring page. Others, it was the creative thing where they dictated what they felt like obedience meant after I taught them. But we've always done it at 5. I did a much more advanced one with Christopher, who has special needs, because I felt like he didn't have the sense of what was bad and good. So I had researched quite a bit about what would be in art and in color combinations, what would create a negative feeling and create a positive feeling. So all the positive traits, we made paper out of pages out of construction paper with the colors yellow, blue, tan, these peaceful color combinations, and all the negative traits we made with black, purple, and red, and odd angles and everything, just trying to convey to him a negative feeling about these types of, about lying, about disobedience, and a positive in the light feeling about the good traits. So that's probably beyond what most people have the time and want to do, but it was necessary in my case. And as they get older, we will study together. When you have a combination of kids, you can just tag that right onto your prayer time, and we will often read out loud from the Building Christian Character when we've got children that are more 6th, 7th grade. And even if we don't read out loud from it, we'll assign pages out of it for them to read, because it's a challenge to them, and they're ready for that kind of challenge. Whereas the little kids, even if we're reading from the Building Christian Character, we can still discuss it on their level. And in those cases, I have found it kind of fun to make a character book with all of us. And that means, a high schooler who's very busy with all kinds of stuff doesn't necessarily have to contribute a page, but he might contribute a whole essay that applies, that's applicable to something we've studied in that. And then there'll be things that, the first grader copied a scripture. The third grader wrote a short summary paragraph on responsibility. The 5th grader wrote a 3-paragraph summary, and you really just combine it together with what you're teaching about expository writing. And we have those, a lot of those character traits covered in the readers. So up through about 12, those really carry, we've tried to cover all of the traits, and they can read them out loud, or you can read out loud with them, and they'll have a lot of what they need to learn, and then you can assign the older kids stuff from the actual Building Christian Character book.
So you're saying that one way you could do it would be that you would read from the reader, and then it has the Bible study or character study. And so then you could take that further with your older kids and have them read that section in the Building Christian Character and do a writing from that.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So here's a question that came in that I think kind of works together with everything, and that is, do you ever do these unit studies or these writing workshops together in groups? So with other families or with a group of families, how would that work?
So yes, I actually think that can be very beneficial. We have, every year we've done at least part of the school year with at least one other family. Sometimes 2 or 3 other families, depending on the sizes of all of our families. And I think it inspires the children to new ideas, new ways of thinking. And also I think, there may be some moms who are very gifted in teaching math, but feel a little deficient in teaching writing, or vice versa. They're very gifted in teaching writing and they feel a little deficient in teaching math. And when we work together as a community, it really helps fill in the gaps. And there's no shame in asking for help or saying, I love your kids' writings. Would you do a workshop with us too? I think that's the beauty of community, and it's very helpful. So yes, we do every year. We do part of the year with at least one, if not more, other families, and work together to do a project. We've done unit studies and the writings associated with that, but then we've sometimes just done the writing workshop, just working our way through all those guidelines writings and things like that as well.
So would you advise doing that every day, or just like maybe once a week, once a month? How would you advise if you were going to be working together?
We always have done it once a week. Yeah, just the same day we're having our family workshop, Friday, we have the other family or 2 or 3 over. And that's what I think most people would do. Every day is a bit much for the travel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I think there's something very inspiring about it too, though. Like I had Mikey was struggling with reading out loud. And a lot of times it's just him and me anymore. And so we were really trying to work on intonation and all those things, and he was struggling. So I had some other families, Nicholas came and some other kids, and they were reading out loud. And he was very inspired by their reading out loud and how good they did. And so he is reading out loud much better now. So I think there is something to it, or hearing a good writing that really inspires them that, oh, I want to do this too, and I can do this. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll hear whether it be your own kids or whether it be the neighbors or the cousins or whoever's doing the workshop with you, you'll begin to hear in your kids' writings new words coming in that they have never used before. And they can be a little plagiarists. They'll even use whole phrases, which when they're young, I really don't mind. We have to learn from the masters. We have to learn from people who do better than us. And so if they love to hear the grumbling of thunder, and then they keep using it and using it, and eventually you'll say, let's come up with another phrase. We've used that one a lot. But that's good for them to notice what is unique about the other writings or the other ways of reading or communicating. I think that's very beneficial to inspire them to a higher level.
We've had a lot of other questions come in, but they kind of take us in other directions, and we're getting close to an hour here. So,
do we have one more that would be connected to this, do you think? Or do you feel like we can just visit one of these things again that I maybe didn't?
I think this is good. I think that maybe this is a good one to just kind of touch on, and maybe we could talk more on this next time, because I think this is a big subject, yet I think it's a big one and goes along with a lot of what we talked about. So this just came in. So what would your advice be to a mother about to begin homeschooling with her child? Age 5, with younger siblings, 3, 18 months, and expecting in August.
Oh, wow.
So that's
We've
a different
all been
season.
there.
Yep.
At least you and I have.
Yep.
So 5, 3, 18 months, and expecting in August.
Yes.
Okay. So when my kids were that age, one of the most important things to me was to have a wonderful family time together. So just getting them all around, hopefully when the baby was napping, but probably 18 months up could do this on some level. To sit them in their little chairs, and I usually have a special chair for each one. If my husband's work allowed him to be home, the toddler always had a season of sitting beside daddy, and it became, I'm gonna sit with daddy, you know. They really like to do that, and teach them songs, and teach them to memorize scriptures, and read them an edifying story, and point out the good things in it and the good pictures and who did what. And I remember doing those read aloud Bible stories that have blind Bartimaeus and in our school family time. And so songs, memorization, script, and stories, especially Bible stories or educational stories that they can comprehend. And it doesn't need to go on for hours and hours. And then when the the 3-year-old and the 18-month-old, and I'd be sure that my kids will take a nap until at least 5 because of this need to work with the other children individually that are in school. Then when they were napping, I would work with the 5-year-old on their letter shapes and they're listening for sounds and the things that would be more on their level. But be sure to have that family workshop time where you're together and it's fun, but it's also a challenge to stay in your seat, to clap on beat, or something like that.
Yeah.
But that is the foundation of your writing workshop, of your family reading, is to be able to do that and to do it together.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. But if you can get down there with them and you can read the story of blind Bartimaeus, I guarantee you can even capture the attention of the 18-month-old. Where's Bartimaeus? And put their finger on the page. There he is. Can he see? Close your eyes. You know, just working through that, and they learn to work together, to cooperate, and to participate in what everyone is doing, which in and of itself is a lesson. It's a lesson. But that's where I would start. And then just being sure you keep that nap time until they're old enough to participate in the activities that you need to do with your 5 or 6-year-old.
Yeah. So you're really training them from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That workshop is going to be the center of your school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that your ability to sit still is as big a part as anything. Ari is my 3-year-old. That's what he does. He sits there and listens during the reading, during the prayer. He sings during the singing. And then I will set him on the floor with either a puzzle or a little train track thing that he fits together, or a paper and pencil. And he tries to trace the lines that I draw. And he does that while we're writing. And he can do it now. He does it quite well.
As much as my school day is really easier without having the little ones, I have to say I miss it. It is a challenge to have them.
It's the sugar and spice.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think that really does cover what we have for today.
Okay. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this broadcast today, and we are going to do it again the first Wednesday of May.
Yes.
And please text any questions you might have to 254-230-0446. Thank you.